Good to talk to you. I understand also they tell me that Keir Starmer and the Labour government are actually deporting more people at the moment than there were currently being deported by the Tories. They won't admit it because apparently they don't want anyone to know because it might be against sort of some of the old lefty principles. But they are supposedly getting rid of more people. But there's a problem here because an awful lot of people are not being sent back to where they should be sent back to, and they're staying here and committing more crime.
Yes, basically what happens when you have criminals, the thing that you always ask the judge to do at the end is to make a deportation order.
Yeah.
So they get their 5 years or whatever, and then there's a deportation order at the end, so you know that they're going. But of course then you start bringing in that horrible bit of legislation called the European Convention on Human Rights.
Yes.
Because the criminal will say, well, this contradicts my human rights because I've got a wife here or I've got a girlfriend here or I've got 3 kids here, and if you send me out of the UK, then I can't see the family.
Right.
So I can't go. Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, bizarrely, one of the people who wasn't deported, I think it was last week, was a guy who was responsible for being a paedophile. He was sent to jail for being a paedophile, and one of the victims was his own stepdaughter, and he wasn't allowed to be deported back to India, I think it was, because it would ruin his family life, and that would be the family, members of whom he had been abusing. Yes,
I mean, we were seeing this all the time, and quite honestly, it's laughable. It really was laughable. But that's what you've got. You see, you've got to get rid of the Human Rights Act, I'm afraid, yeah. Mike.
Yes, but I mean, the problem is that other European countries who are also signatories to the ECHR manage to deport people and they somehow get around whatever the ECHR rules are, because it's not an actual piece of legislation, is it? It's more of a kind of a suggestion as to how you should go forward. But we seem to be uniquely affected by it in Europe.
Yes, we tend to obey anything that Central Europe sends out. And you're quite right, the Europeans don't. The Europeans will say, first of all, what's in our own national interest? Secondly, what's the ECHR said? So if it's in their interest to remove a paedophile, they'll remove them. And that's that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they keep arriving in bigger and bigger numbers. We've got 20,000, I think, now, people who have come here since July, since Keir Starmer's been in. The Labour government, of course, say, well, you know, the thing is the weather was nicer in the summer, so obviously more people have come in the summer than came before July. But there's no sign of them actually stopping coming, even though we're now getting into the depths of winter.
Well, I find it astonishing that we should have government policy and government action worked out on what the weather's doing. I mean, yeah. That's just getting silly, surely. I know on Sunday, I think Sunday, 122 came across in a couple of boats. Well, I don't think the weather was that good on Sunday, but I don't know, Mike. I haven't.
I mean, unless the weather's really rough, and I mean, I'm down on the south coast most weekends, and sometimes it is really rough. And I think a couple of weeks ago when we had Storm Bert, you wouldn't have been, you'd been off your head if you wanted to try and cross the channel in that. But most of the time, the channel is pretty calm.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I'm not the greatest sailor in the world, and I used to have to go across to France regularly on the ferry as opposed to the shuttle.
Yeah.
And if I had to go on the ferry, I would take a very close look to see what the weather was doing before I made myself look a complete fool.
Yeah.
But there you go. It is, and let's face it, they've only got to get halfway anyway.
Right.
So they'll still keep coming.
They'll keep coming because we know, and I've talked about this many times, Kevin, we know why they'll keep coming, because there's no reason for them not to. Because they know that if they get here, they will pretty much be afforded a pretty reasonable style of life. They'll be able to get accommodation. They won't end up on the streets homeless. They'll be given money to spend. They'll be told that they can get free dental care. They may be visited by doctors. And they basically will have a pretty good state of affairs going on for as long as they'd like it to go on, because the chances of them getting deported are next to zero.
Yes, you're quite right. I mean, we need to come out the ECHR first.
Yeah.
We need to come out that's really the priority.
I mean, I've always said we could just ignore it, couldn't we? Because that's what France does.
We could ignore it, and that would generate a huge amount of public money being spent by lawyers.
Yeah.
Because we seem to have a growth industry of lawyers in the UK.
True. But
I don't think the Europeans have that many lawyers as more as we do.
No, I think that's probably right. The other story that I should just mention to you is, notwithstanding the 64% surge in channel crossings that the Labour government has sort of lauded it over, there's now a wellbeing room being created for people in the Home Office. You'll like this because you used to probably work not unadjacent to the Home Office. But there's going to be a grand opening to officially unveil it to staff next week, coming up inside the Home Office, because they need a wellbeing room because they're stressed out dealing with all the small boats and the people coming in seeking asylum. Brilliant, isn't it?
It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I actually did about 9 months on the 2012 Olympics in the security section of the Home Office, dealing with the Olympics. So I saw everything that the Home Office had got there, and I can well believe that they now want a wellbeing room.
Well, apparently there's an internal circular email which has been sent round by the department's chief people officer, who's called Sarah Taylor. She says, come along and join us for the opportunity to meet her and other Home Office colleagues. Tea and coffee will be provided at the event. The new wellbeing room will be in 2 Marsham Street in Westminster, and it's here to provide a space for you to have a break. Whether you're feeling stressed, a little anxious, or just need some alone time, the new wellbeing room is here for you. It says it's equipped with furniture and kitchen point facilities. It has what you need to take a break from your desk.
God, I bet that's going to be popular.
If you've bothered to come in that day.
Yeah, that is going to be really popular. That's going to be flooded out.
I mean, I can't quite believe that this is what the civil service is all about now.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, there are a lot of civil servants, particularly in border force, working on the front line, who are working very, very hard. So
yeah, they're not in Westminster, though. They don't get a wellbeing room.
No, they're not. One of the things that I argued when I was there was there were too many uniformed staff working in Westminster.
Yes.
When we ought to have uniformed staff on the controls. But, of course, that wasn't a very popular thing to say.
No, of course not. They don't like the truth, do they?